willkommen an Tag 8 hier in Cannes. Ich habe mir heute einen Film angeschaut, wo ich länger in der Warteschlange gestanden bin, als der Film gedauert hat. Und zum Glück war das nicht der Film Carlos, denn der dauert 5,5 Stunden. Ich habe gesehen den Film Stones in Exile und Mick Jagger ist hier gewesen in Cannes. Und da sehen wir jetzt ein paar Bilder von der Pressekonferenz und vom Film.
Und der Präsident Mick Jagger.
Anyway, I'd like to tell you about the period, the 70s, the early 70s. So there we were young, good-looking, and stupid. And now we're just stupid. So I've heard all these jokes before. Nixon was in the White House. The war in Vietnam was going on. Eddie Merckx had won the Tour de France, and we didn't know anything about this because we were stuck next door in Villefranche making this record. And you won't see anything about any of that in this film, but that's just too bad. I'd like to do one thing though in English, which I didn't do in French, which is like to thank everyone involved in making this film, because everyone worked so hard on it. The director, Stephen Kayak. The producers, John Batsek and Victoria Cairman. Stephen's going to say a few.
Just a few words. Any Rolling Stones fans in the audience tonight? When did you start to
think about this?
Yeah.
I don't know.
To do the film, to produce a film. To do the film
when we start to do the record, and we start to add tracks, and then we start to think about it, I thought it would be a good idea if we, you have to turn this down, it's too loud. I thought it would be a good idea to do a film about it, because the thing about it's so long ago that just to do a record is, it's not enough. You've got to see something of the period, and people, that weren't around then, they can't understand. So when we started talking about it, I was always of the mind, and as was Stephen and John and Victoria, that we keep it in the period, that we don't have it too much in the present, that we don't have too many people just sitting on chairs and reminiscing, that we actually see something of the period, that we see nearly all of the period, and that we kind of live in that period for the hour more or less.
When I was watching it was that the Beatles had just broken up a year before that you were working on it, and when you were recording, were you thinking about the fact that you had outlasted the Beatles, and this was like fresh territory? This was like a new place to go. They were always your rivals, kind of.
The thing was, I suppose that maybe we were, but the thing was that the Beatles had never been on the stage for years. In fact, they never played a show. And this was now the era already. I know we'd say now, it's very important, live music. But this was the era of, big arena tours starting off. And we'd already done a very big arena tour of the world, 1969, 70. And I think that the Beatles hadn't done a show since 1966, and that was only a couple of songs in a kind of in a sort of special concert. So in a way, perhaps we didn't think ourselves being the same as them. They were rather sort of cut off from the world already. I know we sort of cut ourselves a bit off by recording it, but I don't know what we thought really about the Beatles at that point. I think it was kind of sad, but I don't know if we didn't think anything like that was weird. Well, I don't think that was
The rivalry was always sort of overstated, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, certainly by then that was all finished, but thanks, good question.
Yeah. So
I never thought about it. But when you first see a picture that you haven't seen for a long time, it's the same as seeing you and your mum years ago or something. I remember, what were they doing there? And because sometimes you can't remember who were these people. Because when we were doing this we would come across this, what was his name, John? The boy, there was a little boy.
Oh, Jake.
Jake, yeah. So we started looking at these still pictures, and there's this little blonde boy with long hair, you know? I said, who's that boy? Who's that kid? And then we're gonna find him, we're gonna find this kid. So how did we find him?
A book was written about his dad, and then People magazine interviewed him, and he talked about being an 8-year-old drug smuggler.
Yeah.
They'd strapped cocaine to him and flown him down for the wedding.
Right.
And he's an American TV actor now, so he's pretty well known, right?
Yeah.
TV, yeah, he's on Medium. He's Patricia Arquette's husband.
There you
He's
go.
a very nice guy. Turned out great.
It didn't do him any harm.
Turned out great.
It's not a recommended, vacation for an 8-year-old.
How can you work in such a situation?
How did you do that? Well, you can, it's quite easy really. I was just reading this article in the paper today about marijuana cooks in the New York Times, and a whole new range of cooking which is based on the fact that they smoke a lot of dope. And it's all these different kinds. It's very interesting. It's in the New York Times today.
Cookies, probably.
A lot of cooking. No, but there's all kinds of other things like cheese, fried steak, and all this. But there's a whole movement in America of these sort of pot smoking cooks. So it can be done. I'm not saying it's really great to smoke pot and sing. I don't think that's really ideal. What a terrible duo. What a terrible duo, really, John and Goddard, and get them in a room, talk about film. I don't know, maybe they've done it in the Cave of Cinema, those two talking together. It'd be quite interesting to do, wouldn't it? Marty's version of it. But the 1+1, which was the Goddard film, is a very good film, but no one's ever been able to explain what it's about. But it doesn't matter, When the Exile came out, was the release of Apocalypse Now, which was like one of my favourite films from that period. Because Apocalypse Now came out the year that Exile came out, and that's always been one of my most favourite movies.
Merci à tous, thanks a lot. Thanks.